Hello everyone and welcome to Cappuccino with HR. My name is Rudi Bauer, and after 40 years in business, I'm 100% sure that the success of companies is directly related to the passion of the people working for these companies. With the Cappuccino of HR, we created a format where we really invite people. It's HR leaders, it's recruiters, it's talent acquisition guys, and we're talking about all the different kind of topics. And the range is going from AI, of course, to new work, to leadership, and all the challenges along the way. Yeah, hello and good afternoon. I'm welcome to another episode of Cappuccino with HR. And today I'm really delighted to have a guy with me who is already in business for many, many years, as well as I. And I'm talking to David Simmonds, and David Simmonds is chairman of HCM Metrics, if I have it right. But anyhow, welcome, David. I'm really glad to have you with us.
It's good to meet you, and I've been really looking forward to this.
Yeah. And I want to start with a kind of a first thing which I would ask you, David. Probably you could introduce yourself in a few sentences, just that the audience gets to know you a little bit better.
Yes, I'm chairman of HCM Metrics, which is part of the HR analytics group. And I've been in HR all my life, and I stumbled into analytics about 10 years ago. I went on this workshop called HR Analytics, and I thought that doesn't make sense. How can you have HR and analytics in the same sentence? Then I thought, no, this is the future. And we're getting some traction and a lot of interest in how analytics and data and metrics can leverage HR to take its rightful place in organizational transformation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. David, as the format is called Cappuccino with HR, and I know that you're living in Great Britain, UK, but I have to ask you this question as well. What is your favorite coffee, or is it just tea?
Well, thank you. Yes, I do drink a lot of both. There's a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is I like latte, but many years ago, myself and my wife, we were going around the Far East, and we were in Indonesia, and this person was taking us round and showing us all the sights. And we said about 10:30, we said, we'd like a coffee. She said, I know just the place. And she drove into the jungle, and we went into this clearing, and we saw these animals. And I said, what are those? And she said, they're called civets. And I said, well, what do civets do? She said, well, they eat the coffee beans. I said, okay. What happened? She said, well, you can imagine what happens to the beans. And then we were taken, and we actually drank some of it.
Yeah.
It was strong.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a coffee story. Today we're talking about a topic, and I really enjoy this topic because I'm in HR since many, many years as well now, and there's always a lot of buzzwords, and I mean there's new upcoming buzzwords in HR. I think probably every month, and then I think everybody's talking about it every conference. I mean it's a kind of the hot topic, and everybody's grabbing this and trying to explain that this will disrupt HR now, or disrupt the ways how companies recruit and source and get stuff on board. How good is HR in being structured and probably data driven from your experience?
Those are two questions, Rudi. How well is it structured, and how good is it with data? I was in Amsterdam recently. I was asked to go and speak about this topic, and almost everybody was talking about AI as if it was a new subject. Well, it's not that new, to be honest. But you're right. HR does tend to go with the latest fad or fashion or fancy. But to your question, some HR is very well structured, not just in big organizations, but medium-sized organizations as well. How good are they at embracing the benefits of technology and analytics? Again, it's varied. Some are good, some are not quite so good. And my mission in life is to enable them to embrace the benefits of data, analytics, and metrics to hit the bottom line and to make the workplace something which employees look forward to going to work.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, this has a kind of a quantity and a quality aspect. I mean, there's a quantity aspect, of course, I mean, which is explaining the kind of number of hirings probably, or number of applicants and all this kind of stuff. And there's a quality aspect. How could it be set up for organizations to get both of these effects and to have a kind of a value in both of these effects? Because
Sure. Well, I'm a social scientist, and I've embraced qualitative data research for many years. And I think it's becoming increasingly acceptable that qualitative data is as good as quantitative. Many people in HR are aware of qualitative data from things like the annual engagement survey, that kind of thing. It's the quantitative area which people in HR are less familiar with. If I can give you an example, however, one of the things that we do is to advocate the use of international standards, ISO. Some of our listeners will be familiar with ISO standards for quality, environment, health, and safety. There is an international standard, ISO standard for HR. We are the world's first lead auditors in this. There are 60 metrics, some of which are quantitative, some qualitative. Let me give you an example. One of the areas is leadership. There are 3 metrics under leadership in this standard, some quantitative, some qualitative. One of them is span of control, which is very easy to measure. How many people have you got working for you? And there are benchmarks that we could apply to that. Another one is quantitative. Who has been on which leadership development program? How much did it cost? Was it worth it? Did they apply it? Very easy. But the third metric is qualitative, and it's called leadership trust, and it's measurable. Many people don't measure it because they don't want to know the results. But leadership trust is very important, and it's freely available, and people, your listeners can Google it. It's called the Leadership Trust Index. And by combining qualitative and quantitative, the organization gets a much broader and holistic view.
But for me, data, I mean, it's a little bit, probably it's a little bit philosophical, the question that I'm raising now. But for me, data is the answer on something. But it needs to, it means that you have to know the questions before. And our company is good enough in already having a clue of the questions. They want to find answers in the data, because I think that's a kind of, otherwise you have data and you don't even know how to interpret them.
Well, I think that you've answered your own question. And again, at my recent talk in Amsterdam, that's initially how I set out my talk, by saying that companies are awash with data. They got so much data, and then they go looking for a problem or a report. No, we have to start the other way around. We must start with the issue, the problem, the pinch points, and then start looking for the data, and then produce the report, the results, the outcomes, the impact. Many people who are in large enterprise corporations will have heard of, or probably use, one of the 5 major vendors: SAP, Oracle, Cornerstone, Workday, Visio. And those in small organizations will use one of 100 other ones. However, in my experience, most people in HR are technophobic. And yet at the same time, they're knocking on the door of the C-suite saying, let us in, we want a seat on the board. But at that level, they took a different language of graphs and charts, numbers and spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So it's not for lack of data, it's how to use it and apply it to address HR problems in order that that can hit the organization and transform the bottom line.
From which part of the organization do you think HR could learn most in that aspect? Because, I mean, there's units in every organization. For example, I mean, I never met a company not having a sales a sales strategy, not having a product strategy, not having a marketing strategy. It could be a good one or a bad one, but it's there. Could HR learn from this kind of other organizational parts of the company?
And I'm in discussion at the moment with an organization that wants to see greater coordination and consolidation. I think too long, HR in particular, but other departments generally have been in a siloed mentality, whereas we need to cross-fertilize and learn from different approaches. All the ones you mentioned, and obviously IT in addition.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that the companies are not really good in having a kind of a people strategy. So the HR that I met during the last couple of years and still meet on the market is still in a very reactive modus. I mean, it's not pushing now HR, but it's reactive. I mean, it's still reacting on what happens in the company, what happens in the organization, and then we try to quickly extinguish the fire and find a solution. But doesn't it mean if I want to use data, if I want to develop myself forward as an organization, that I need a kind of a clear strategy? And that also gives me probably then the allowance to be in the seat at a big seat, at a big table?
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. A classic example is what happened after COVID-19. There was huge amounts of panic everywhere, particularly in HR. And that has led to mass resignations. And now in HR, there's a lot of stress and burnout. Well, obviously, we cannot prevent issues like COVID-19, but we can predict them. There will be another pandemic. There will be a run on the dollar. There will be an oil spillage or an earthquake. It will happen. So we need to prepare now for when it does happen. So we just press plan B. With the data that already exists, we can now predict the future. It's very simple to you. We talk to organizations. We say, look, there's no smoke and mirrors. We'll use your data on your machines. And with some very simple mathematical statistical software, we can predict what happens next year. So that if there is a new market or a new product or downsizing or mergers, we can predict what will be needed in terms of the workforce. So right now we can say to a company, how do you do your succession planning? And they say, well, it's a blank sheet of paper, or it's this year plus 10%. I say, well, we can do it better than that. We know now and can predict this time next year how many people will have been promoted, how many people left because they weren't promoted, how many accidents there have been and what did they cost, who's been on which leadership program and did they implement it. We can even predict today, for 12 months' time, how many people are on maternity leave and they haven't even conceived yet.
Yeah, for sure. It's more or less written in stone. You just need to read these kind of figures for sure. Yeah. And what core metrics do you think are really essential for making HR effective?
The ISO standard that I referred to has got 60 metrics. There are now regulations in Europe which come under the ESG banner. It's called ESRS S1, and there are 200 data points. But you're right, there are key ones and core ones. And most people in HR that I talk to, they're talking about three big things: staff turnover or retention, engagement, and diversity. And all three of those are very measurable. But we can measure everything from talent acquisition to workforce planning, the contingent workforce, health and safety. It's all measurable.
And if companies want to get into that direction, what do you think is what are the logical first three steps? Because otherwise, I think it's a kind of a field where if you don't have a clue about it, if you don't have any kind of really experience within that field, I mean, it's a kind of a shocking, foggy thingy where you don't even want to enter this room because, I mean,
Well, that's
you
right.
probably Yeah.
And they don't know where to start, and there's panic and, oh dear, what
Yeah.
should we do?
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And people are becoming aware of the need for data analytics in the HR arena. In terms of standards, the ISO standard, ISO 30414, is the one to look at. I mentioned European standards, which are now applicable for every organization in Europe to report and disclose. That's ESRS S1. Those are documents in the public arena. And if people want to take it further and discuss this in more detail, they can contact us at HCM Metrics.
Mm-hmm. And if do you, I mean, if HR is thinking about implementing this for an organization, if HR is willing to go these first steps, how difficult do you think is it to also sync with the top management, also get the awareness there, and also get the kind of the need for urgency there as well?
We always do an awareness raising piece when we begin with an organization, firstly with HR itself, because they think we're policemen or inspectors or examiners. We know we're there to help them help themselves. They're good at their job. We just prove it. Getting buy-in from top management is very, very easy because our colleagues in marketing, IT, finance, they've been doing this for years. It's only HR that is catching up. And if we offer to the board, the C-suite, numbers and graphs and charts, they'll bite our hands off. So in future, HR will continue to do a fantastic job, and they're exceptionally good at storytelling, but we just provide the data to support the case.
Mm-hmm. And how long does such a project or the implementation of such a project normally last, or on average? Is there a timeline you can mention, or is it totally
I mean,
depend?
it's always tailored. There's not one size fits all. There are a number of criteria, including the size of the organization, its complexity, its location. But if I say a typical organization with 1,000 employees on one site, which is fairly mature, let's say they've been in existence for 10 or 15 years, it would take about 100 days.
Okay. So it's 3 months to get a kind of a clue what's going on and to have a kind of a plan. Sure. Mm-hmm. And as we are always having the discussion, I mean, there's a kind of it's like a religion fight, I would say, that there's on one hand you have the data driven guys, and on the other hand you have the human side of guys telling you, okay, we are talking about lifetime, we are talking about purpose, we are talking about appreciation, we're talking about trust. How does that come together? I mean, because data normally tells you the truth. It's the naked truth. Yeah.
Well, I think data may offer some contribution towards truth, but it's not the whole truth. And one of our roles as external auditors is to investigate and interrogate the data to see to what extent it's truthful. We were working with one organization, and they said they had a problem with absenteeism. I said, okay, well, what's your absenteeism rate? They said 14%. I said, that's quite high. And I said, is that the same, the whole organization? They said, we don't know. So I said, well, okay, let's look at what's happening in headquarters and then your various places. And there was a warehouse where it wasn't 14%, it was 30%. So I said, I think you've got a problem. They said, we know. We went to that place, the big warehouse, and it wasn't an absenteeism problem. It was a management problem. There was one particular manager who really was causing all kinds of problems, and people were going sick, or they were having a day off or absent, not because there was anything wrong, but because of the manager. And when we started to talk about management development programs and performance management and communications, guess what? Absenteeism went down. Yeah. So we have to look behind the data for the truth. We need to interrogate it. and this is what we're particularly good at in offering solutions to. There was another organization we dealt with in Eastern Europe. It's a bit sensitive because they're operating in Ukraine and Russia, but they were making applications for computers to sell to Silicon Valley in America.
Mm-hmm.
And they came to us and they said, we've got a problem with HR. I said, okay, tell me more. And they said, it's a recruitment problem. I said, have you got the data? They said, well, we need to get it together. It's in all different parts, which is very typical. Most HR departments have at least 7 systems. And so they got the data together and we interrogated the data, but then we went further and talked to the people in the HR department. And we talked to some of the managers and some of the workers. And they didn't have a recruitment problem at all. Their recruitment was fantastic. But they had lost sight of the back door. People were leaving. So they didn't need recruitment. They needed help with management development and teamwork and leadership and communication. Yeah.
I mean, that was an interesting experience that I made a couple of years ago when I had a basic discussion with our HR department in the company I was working for at this time. We were talking about the kind of war for talents. We were talking about social demographic developments. We were talking about all this kind of situation that anyhow everybody knows in the meantime or probably is discussing. And then we had a kind of, we looked into the data and there was a kind of a finding which for me, it was not even a big surprise, but the whole amount of people that we had to look for within 1 year, we splitted it up and said, okay, what is the number of people that we have to look for because others left the company? And the ratio was 67% and the rest was kind of new business, was probably, we were looking for guys because of growth and further expansion of the business. But 2/3 of the people we had to look for was because of other ones left, and I think it's exactly what you described now. But what is your experience on that? How important is retention?
Yeah, I mean, retention is an issue, and I, for many years, I've been involved in different aspects of learning and recruitment and so on and so on. And if people leave during the first few months, it's not their fault. It's either HR who oversold the job or the manager who couldn't incorporate them into the team. A lot of organizations still do exit interviews. And I say, why are you doing that? It's a waste of time. They say, well, we have to do it, don't we? I said, no, of course you don't. Because by the time the person has given their notice, it's too late. I said, if you want to get some real data, wait until they've gone and then phone them. Don't email because they won't give you, but if you phone them, they'll give you the truth. Because at the exit interview, they say, I'm leaving for pay, promotion, prospect. No. The truth is they cannot stand that toxic manager anymore. So what we can do, we can use the data to identify the key contributors to the organization very easily. And what we then do, we can input into them with career development, career advancement. We can do HR enrollment, enhancement and enrichment. We can do lateral development. It doesn't cost a penny, but they contribute more to the organization and they stay. Retention goes up and turnover goes up.
How important do you think that data-driven HR will be in the future? Is it the kind of knockout criteria for all of them that are resistant towards it?
I can understand resistance. HR classically is quite conservative, doesn't like change. But to your point, I think the future of HR will be data-driven. I'm actually undertaking a PhD at the moment in University of London. It's called Evidence-Based HR. It's the first of its kind in the world. And it's saying that we need to look around within the company and outside the company. We need to look for good practice. We need to be aware of research that's been done and bring it all together so that we don't just wait until the situation happens and then react, as you said, but we can actually make the change happen. And I think it's got to be based on the data and the metrics and the analytics. It's going to be vital. It's going to be imperative.
Mm-hmm. And do you see a kind of a conflict with the data-driven approach if it comes, on the other hand, to respecting privacy and maintaining transparency, or is it supporting this kind of issues?
Yeah. From our perspective, we never go down as far as Jim or Jenny. It's always aggregated, anonymized data. We're not particularly interested in individuals. You're right, however, about privacy, but people in HR are used to this with GDPR, and people in HR are very sensitive to the data, name, address, phone number, social security, visas, workforce permits, and all bank details. They're used to dealing with that. However, your concerns are right. And what some HR departments are doing since COVID, when so many people are remote workers now, they're not using the standard VPN, but they're investigating the possibility of blockchain. And blockchain, my metaphor for blockchain, it's like a river. You have all the tributaries coming in, and then there's the main river, and then there's the delta. But it only flows in one direction. And it's the employee who has control of this. But it's the immutability, the unchangeability, which ensures privacy.
Yeah. As I'm looking at the clock, and I mean the 30 minutes are gone so quickly when we are very close to the end, and I have two questions which I definitely want to ask you. One is more in the direction, if I'm going to found a company now and I'm setting up my HR departments, what kind of skills would you see as the perfect skill setup for HR teams, or for an HR team, which I, as a founder now, would ask you to recommend to me? What should it contain? What kind of skills do you think are necessary as basic setup?
Sure. You mentioned AI earlier. Well, I think there needs to be an awareness that much of the administrative bureaucratic processes don't need to be done by people. They can be done by machines more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah.
But that releases people to use judgment and discernment and prioritization so that we can use strategy in a good way. The second whole area for HR, the people skills. HR is good at listening. It's good at bringing people together. It's good at listening to other people's point of view. So all of that, and storytelling is good. And the third area we've been discussing is data and metrics. People in HR don't have to become experts in data analytics, but they need access to somebody in IT, or you can outsource it to another company. So they're the three big areas I would suggest.
And my last question is going, as you have done, I don't know, hundreds of audits, I think, or probably thousands of audits during the last couple of years. If you have to summarize it in a kind of weaknesses that you found within an organization, or problem areas which you found in organization, what would be the top three?
I'm glad you left the most difficult question till last. The biggest problems with HR, I've mentioned already that many people in HR find change difficult. But I would say the willingness to shift the mindset from everyday policing, compliance, to move it towards strategy, using data and analytics to drive the organization forward. I think that's been the biggest issue and will continue to be the biggest issue in the foreseeable future.
And if it comes to the results, not only meant for HR, is it in many cases, is the problem a leadership problem, or is it a kind of another issue? Is it technology? Is it management? Is it leadership? Is it
all of those? All of those. And unfortunately, people don't like to see those results. However, many of the changes that are coming in are not being driven by management or HR. They're being driven by investors.
Yeah.
And the shareholders are saying, we want to see greater transparency.
Yeah.
On diversity or leadership or health and safety, whatever it happens to be. There was, perhaps we can close with this. There's a fantastic piece of research that was done in America where they looked at organizations that reported on their HR at the time of some regulatory changes. And they looked at organizations before, during, and after these regulatory changes. The organizations that had been doing well beforehand improved. Those that hadn't reported very well started to do it a little bit. But the organizations that reported and disclosed on their HR the best found that within 3 working days, it hit the share price.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. Could you send over the link to us?
Of
Because
course.
then we can probably share this document in the
course.
subtext. Yeah, that's amazing. David, it was a real pleasure to have you with me.
Well, I've enjoyed it so much.
Thank you very much for your time. And I mean, we're having an offline discussion now later on because we are having our HR Leaders Summit in Berlin in July. So I would definitely love to have you as a guest and speaker as well.
This is called Cappuccino with HR. So you invite me to Vienna and I'll have a cappuccino.
Yeah, exactly that. A real one in person then. Yeah. So thank you so much. And dear audience, please stay tuned for the next episodes coming up. And David, once again, thank you very much for your time and sharing your experience and your thoughts and ideas. Thank you so
much.
Goodbye. Thank you for watching Cappuccino with HR. If you enjoy this kind of conversations, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Then you get all this kind of upfront information, your upcoming episodes, and all my nice guests. Cappuccino with HR is brought to you by We Are Developers, Europe's #1 developer community and a leading platform for connecting HR and companies together with developers. If you want to learn more, visit us on wearedevelopers.com. Thank you again for watching and see you next time on Cappuccino with HR.